supposing that the abused, the oppressed, the suffering, the unemancipated, the weary, and those uncertain of themselves should moralize. What will be the common element in their moral estimates? Probably a pessimistic suspicion with regard to the entire situation of man.
When I was a university student, I was right-wing. I couldn't get enough Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Gavin McInnes. I loved owning libs.
You're literally on your ass for a living!
I couldn't find my place on the left wing in university. They were too caught up in their own victimhood and their own identity to see the bigger picture. The left wasn't patriotic. They hated themselves, they hated the West, and I really felt like they hated me. The right, on the other hand, told it like it was. They had morals, they had principles, they rightly knew that the West was the best. They were the group for principled people to exercise their free agency and create a better and more coherent future. But this isn't a video about me regretting my right-wing phase in university. This is a video about how the right has let us down. Because fast forward a few years, and now the right doesn't stand for anything.
The right have devolved into the victimhood and hopelessness they've accused the left of for years. They've foregone all their principles and beliefs in favor of partisanship, and what little they do believe in is not consequential at all. The right used to claim to have the antidote for chaos in the world, yet now they seem to be its biggest contributors. If you see yourself as a patriot with principles and morals, a belief in your future and the future of the West, the right no longer has a place for you.
But how did this happen? And what does this look like now? Get ready for a chud-dunking adventure as I explain how the right wing became spineless cowards.
What's up, gang? There's no ad read for this video. I just want to say thank you for all the support over the last 10 months. Since October 2023, the channel has gone from 1K subs to almost 100,000. And I want to scale this up. I want to take this to the next level. I'm sick of just writing essays and yapping in front of a green screen. I want to get on the ground at protests and developing stories and scenes and really figure out what's going on in a useful way. To help fund this, I'm starting a book club on my Patreon. The minimum spend is $3 Canadian a month, and the theme of the book club is cultural literacy. And this month we're reading Techno-Feudalism. For too long have Zoomers skipped basic political and economic knowledge to read wild philosophical theory that has no bearing on reality. On top of the book club, you also get access to interviews and behind-the-scenes footage, all for $3 minimum. If you like what I do and you want to see this grow into something that's actually significant, please support me on Patreon.
2016 was the year we realized things aren't going to slow down anytime soon, for better or for worse. It was the inflection point after a long series of happenings, from 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, the rise of ISIS, Arab Spring, and the rise of social media. In the late 2000s and the early 2010s, there was this sense that things would calm down. And growing up, Gen Z was told how good things used to be, how normal things used to be. A normalcy that society had lost, but would soon find again. Whatever it was we lost, 2016 was the year we realized it was gone for good, and the future had indeed begun. When we realized this, people started to get angry.
In the years preceding 2016, the left saw themselves as victims of majority conservative culture. The social justice movements of the last 2 decades have seen young progressives fighting for things like an end to police brutality, trans rights, equal wages, and gay marriage. During this time, and continuing today, the right has critiqued the left as a culture of victimhood, spinning any narrative they can to discount their personal agency, in favor of blaming a boogeyman of systemic oppression that has kept anyone who is not a straight white male from prospering in the West. And although the left has fought hard for genuinely important social issues, the culture of victimhood they've fostered has always been their undoing.
Victimhood is a very interesting cultural phenomenon, because it has a twofold effect in the way one engages with the world. It makes you a moral arbiter while simultaneously absolving you of responsibility. Researchers at Tel Aviv University describe victimhood as having 4 main traits. 1. Constantly seeking recognition for one's victimhood. 2. Moral elitism. 3. Lack of empathy for the pain and suffering of others. And 4. Frequently ruminating on past victimization. This makes victimhood an immobile position to operate from. No matter what changes happen in your favor, nothing is good enough as long as you see yourself as the victim. This is something the right often says about the left. No matter how woke they go, it'll never be woke enough. For the victim, there's always another force to blame. Ideally, one would fight for change, and once that change is achieved, they would move on. But this is never what happens.
What changed in 2016 is the right fully made the shift and adopted the culture of victimhood they had blamed the left of capitalizing on for years, positioning themselves on the receiving end of the folly from progressive politics, portraying themselves as the protectors of a bygone era that had been stolen from them by the left. This victimhood had been rising as various cultural pillars fell out of conservative control. The 80s, 90s, and 2000s all saw pop music, Hollywood, and big business shift from being traditionally conservative institutions to being liberal institutions. Compare the sentiments from George Bush's 2001 inaugural speech versus Trump's 2017 inaugural speech, the two most recent right-leaning presidents in the US. George Bush's speech is filled with sentiments about the project of America, American liberalism, America as a global superpower, and American citizens as strong and forgiving. The speech is about cementing what America's values are in the new millennium and asks for personal responsibility in this process. Trump's, on the other hand, is much different. It almost immediately pits the American people against the government, saying that while elite politicians got rich, everyone else got poor. And it proceeds with this general tone of resentment and bitterness, name-dropping immigration, Islamic terror, and foreign militaries, all while positing that outside forces are responsible for the country's decline. Now, this isn't a comment on either presidencies, just a showcase of the right's tone shift of the last 2 decades and how this culture of victimhood has become normalized. Populist politics are now synonymous with playing the reactionary blame game. The side that was once the champions of personal agency are now bigger crybabies than the people they were critiquing only a decade ago.
Now, before I move on to the chud dunking, and my God, will I be chud dunking, I need to explain a Nietzschean term that perfectly describes the current state of the right wing. That being, ressentiment. Not to be confused with resentment in English or its French translation. Ressentiment is a specific relationship between subject and object that lack translation in any language other than Nietzsche's German. Ressentiment is a feeling of powerlessness and inferiority to an outside force, being unable to express one's frustration. In response to this feeling, rather than mastering or evolving past the outside force, ressentiment causes one to reconstruct their values in relation to their oppressor. Their weaknesses become virtues. To further cement the reconstruction of values, one must continually blame the outside force. Once this change has occurred, the one experiencing ressentiment has no reason to change or evolve. They never have to take responsibility. They are self-imprisoned in perpetual persecution. This exactly describes the right's current relationship to the left. The contemporary right wing will never adapt or transform. They will never modernize to deal with a rapidly changing world. The contemporary right has no values, first principles, or policy agenda. The right now only exists as the opposite of the left. This is the morality they've built for themselves. Unable to act, unable to believe in anything, unable to hold a position, the right has become an ideology of slaves. But how is this manifested in political and cultural discourse? Well, it's made them all retarded. I'm now going to rip into a bunch of conservative pundits and influencers for being spineless cowards with no beliefs or principles. But before I do that, you may be asking, Art Chad, in the beginning you mentioned how annoying liberals are and how they've had this victim complex for so long. If you're making a video critiquing ideologies for being spineless and not believing in a future for themselves, why aren't you critiquing the left? That's a fair point, but here's the thing. The left has way less influence than the right. The obese, blue-hair, mentally ill egregore the right loves to dunk on is completely powerless. The person crying in their car because Trump got elected will never hold an influential position in society. The feminist dance theory graduate writing a dissertation on how stop signs are fascist will never influence anybody important. Nobody takes these people seriously. Maybe on some university campuses, watched through the lens of Charlie Kirk videos, one could believe the radical left is an actual problem. I know I used to as I binged watched liberals getting wrecked compilations 6 years ago. But the second you go out and get a real working class job, you find that no one thinks about these things. I have a day job and a rich social life completely outside of the internet, and I have never met a fucking soul who would ever consider themselves radically left.
There's also the argument that, as I mentioned, corporate culture has shifted left, with DEI, anti-racist training and such. Fair enough, we shouldn't be hiring to fill racial diversity quotas, that's fucked up. But here's the thing, here's what they don't tell you. Nobody likes these things. There is nobody championing DEI and trying to implement it in every public and private institution. There is no proponent of racial diversity quotas racking up millions and millions of views and influencing important people. If I'm being charitable, DEI is something that corporations blindly do in order to keep their public image in good standing and avoid controversy. In reality, any instance of corporations going woke is a flash in the pan, created by boomer board members overcorrecting based on perceived social trends. And Nobody will give a fuck about DEI in a couple years. Classic American brands like Bud Light, Harley Davidson, and Jack Daniels have already begun to scale back their DEI programs based on consumer backlash. You know why? Because we live in a free market. And if you don't like something, if you don't like a company, you don't have to buy it. And they will change to get you as a customer. It's a beautiful system we've created.
Social media platforms have inarguably become less woke over the last few years, to the point where I can't get race realism off my timeline. The left has been ripped on for years, and it's so easy and pointless that it's boring to do so. The right, on the other hand, actually has influence. All of the names I'm about to mention have millions of followers, multiple media outlets, and talk in the ears of people influential in politics. The right has gone on to be the unquestioned moral arbiters of the internet. People like
Libs of TikTok, a Twitter page with over 3 million followers that I'm sure needs no introduction. I'm sure you're asking Art Chad, a Twitter page. Who the fuck cares about a Twitter meme page? How is that a right-wing pundit? Libs of TikTok has done a lot over the years. She was in close contact and influenced Christina Pushaw, the director of Ron DeSantis' presidential campaign. She's endorsed by Tucker Carlson, promoted by Trump. At one point was followed by Elon Musk. Libs of TikTok's creator, Chaya Raichik, was first identified in 2022 in a Washington Post article by journalist Taylor Lorenz. Many accused Lorenz of doxing Chaya after she received death threats during the article's release. The irony here is that Chaya's whole shtick is doxing people, and to date, she has singled out over 280 people on her Twitter page, many of whom have been fired from their jobs because of it. Now, sometimes this could be justified, like this teacher that was filming OnlyFans content in the school's washroom. But most of the time, it's an unjustified witch hunt, like this teacher who was put on leave for wearing a dress during the school spirit day.
You know, this is a thing that like frat boys and football players do. It's not just like satanic drag LGBT agenda. It's like a very normal like university thing. First off, you're either pro-doxing or against doxing. You don't have the right to complain about a journalist releasing your full name because you've received the same treatment you've dished out to hundreds of people. If you're so comfortable doxing people, you should accept the fact that someone is going to throw it back at you at some point. But this is just one of Chaya's many incongruencies. She also falls into the classic conservative trap of being pro-free speech unless it's inconvenient. She's vehemently against political violence if it's against Trump, but doesn't care if it's against one of her opponents. Dave Rubin does this as well. He tweeted that he hopes AOC lights herself on fire, but condemned anyone who had similar sentiments about Trump's assassination attempt. Charlie Kirk, an explicitly Christian conservative pundit who founded an organization with the sole goal of mobilizing church leaders into politics, asked pastors to do more to get Donald Trump elected. Donald Trump is a man who has divorced twice, cheated on all of his wives, has 3 different baby mamas, and definitely hasn't read the Bible.
Wondering what 1 or 2 of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal.
Jordan Peterson is an Elon Musk stan. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world and has used his wealth to purchase Twitter, one of the largest social media platforms in the US, and has used his platform to expressly promote his political beliefs, including the championing of someone who is actively running for president. The world's richest man controls the political narrative on social media. Imagine if he was a Democrat. I don't really care if he's our guy, or if you agree with him. You're either for or against elites having control over the cultural narrative. Postmodernism is the death of truth, meta-narratives, and overarching claims about reality. Something Peterson has rallied against for the entirety of his career in favor of having consistent principles and societal standards. What's more postmodern than subverting your own beliefs about elite power simply because you personally happen to agree with this guy?
Find me a consistent conservative pundit. Find me someone who will blanketly condemn violence, whether it's BLM riots or UK immigration riots. Find me a pundit that's a free speech absolutist, whether it's on the campus or in their own company. Find me a conservative pundit who loves their country and will defend America, even if it means agreeing with liberals. If conservatism is on the side of consistent moral standards, find me someone who lives up to that claim, because I have yet to find it. But it's not the hypocrisy that bothers me the most. That's on par with most political pundits. And if I'm gonna throw these people a bone, you can't be perfect. When you build your career on forming opinions all day, every day, you're going to commit some logical fallacies. The worst issue isn't the hypocrisy. It's the fact that the opinions they do have don't fucking matter at all. To illustrate this point, let's look at the Kamala Harris AI crowd scandal. This photo was shared countless times all over the internet as proof that Kamala Harris is manipulating photos of her crowds in order to generate hype for her campaign. Now, first off, The claim that the photo has been manipulated is easily debunked. There are multiple angles of people filming on their phones inside the crowd that are consistent with the crowd size from the original photo. And then people pointed out that the plane engine wasn't reflecting the crowd. Some guy had to make a fucking Blender model to show how light reflection works on curved surfaces. Shout out to this guy, his video got millions of views on Twitter, but no one ever credited him and just stole it from him, so go to his video and give him some credit. Now, in spite of all this, the crime here isn't that they were wrong about the photo being manipulated. It's that this is all they seemed to care about.
This was the narrative that dominated conservative social media. It was nothing about Kamala Harris's agenda, or the fact that at that point, her only policy was limiting tax on tips, something Trump was also planning to do. It wasn't even the fact that at that point, she hadn't done any unscripted press conferences or media events. All they could focus on was whether this singular photo was manipulated or not. That's what you're fucking worried about? That's the most pressing issue in the election cycle for you? Even if the photo had been manipulated, it would still be irrelevant. In contrast to everything else that's going on, the right wing can't focus on anything else because the right wing doesn't believe in anything. They don't talk about why they're right. They just want to show why the other side is wrong. Slave morality. Literal fucking slave morality. And there's been countless misplaced attempts at owning the libs over the past year. Tim Walz has been caught lying about his rank in the military and the fact that he never actually served in combat. I keep seeing Kamala's daughter all over Twitter, and I think people are angry because she has, like, tattoos or something. Libs of TikTok posted 23 separate times about Secret Service agents breaking into a salon so rally-goers could use the bathroom. Go to any conservative podcast and you will find an episode posted in the last few months about gender hormone therapy for children.
Now, I want you to take a step back and think of the big picture here. You're probably thinking that, yeah, of course, I'm worried about these topics, and rightly so. I don't think children can consent to hormone therapy. I think it's bad that Tim Walz lied about his rank in the military. I agree with you. But in the grand scheme of pressing issues, do these topics really warrant the focus they've been receiving? No matter how important you think these topics are, do you think the right's energy is better focused somewhere else? Are anyone else's groceries really expensive? Has anyone else's rent doubled in the past 6 years? Is that just me? Judging by the state of conservative media, it really feels like it's just me.
The right's energy would be focused on something more consequential if they believed in something. But they don't. Look at the whole debacle with the Algerian boxer. The right wing seems to have been consistent for years, that what's in your pants determines your gender. And then this boxer comes along who is biologically female but has male chromosomes. And now, all of a sudden, chromosomes determine your gender, and it has nothing to do with your genitalia, and she couldn't compete because she has male chromosomes even though she was biologically female. So you are just going to upend your entire metaphysics because one thing challenged it.
The whole point of having axioms, principles, and morals is that they're ironclad, whether they benefit you all the time or not. No matter what, you stick to your guns. Axioms, principles, morals, these are the glue that hold society together, and that's what makes Western society the greatest in the world. We have collective agreements. That's what unites us. Whether or not those collective agreements personally benefit us all the time doesn't matter. It was important to me that I made this video from the perspective of someone who believes in something. I didn't want this to be another chud dunk on how conservatives are weird. And right now, I feel like I'm the only person who believes in these things. It seems like the left has always hated the West, and the right thinks that society is going to collapse in 5 years. I would happily have called myself a moderate conservative until the last few years, as I now no longer see my views reflected in conservative politics at all. One of my favorite quotes is from an old professor I had. He told me that society is a train going off a cliff. The right wants to slow the train down, and the left wants comfier seats. It is now clear to me that neither side wants to slow the train down. The left wants comfier seats, and the right is arguing that the old seats were actually comfier. As a man in his mid-20s who is now inheriting a world and a culture that desperately needs healing, I ask you to abandon your partisanship. Abandon your previous notions of ideology. I don't have concrete answers here. I'm not proposing some radical new metaphysical system to reconstruct the nature of reality. I'm simply saying that what we've been doing for the past 8 or 10 years isn't working. The right has always positioned itself as the antidote to chaos, yet they now sow the seeds of hazy morality, an absence of principles, and an overall anti-Westernism that's impossible to ignore. Go, talk to your peers. Realize that what unites you is your desire for a better future. Find a path forward that breaks away from the useless partisanship and victimhood we've been platforming for the last decade. Choose life, never kill yourself, and vote for Pierre Poilievre.